New to watercolor? Perfect. These flowers are made for first-time painters. Just a little water, a little color, and a touch of curiosity, and that is all that is required. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Here I am just pulling out some watercolor paints, some clean water, and then of course we need some watercolor paper. Now, these flowers can be painted in a free-handed way. A drawing is not required to paint these. I do have some very simple pencil marks on my page today just to help out with my composition, but like I say, that is not required. Let me just pull out my little practice paper here to show you what we are going to be doing so you can decide what is best for you. If you do choose to put down some pencil marks on your page, probably the most important thing is sketching the center part of the flower. All of the petals are going to be painted freehanded, but if you pencil in the centers of the flowers, that way you can just know how many flowers you want and maybe what positions they would look good in. I've drawn 5 flower centers on my page, but you'll notice I did leave empty spaces all the way around the centers for where the petals are going to be painted in later. And then if you want to, you can draw in a general guideline for the flower stems or maybe some leaves or grass at the base. But like I say, this is totally optional, just whatever you need to help you feel ready and comfortable to paint. I even just penciled in a spot for maybe a flower bud too. But even though I have a general guideline here, I may not follow everything perfectly. We're just going to play it by ear and see how it goes. Now, I am going to tape my paper down because that way when I film, I don't accidentally turn the painting out of the camera shot, but this is not required either. In fact, it might be nice to be able to turn your paper a little bit as you start painting in the petals. And if you want to tape down your paper but still want to be able to turn your paper, then just tape your paper down to a separate board or something. That way you can still have it taped as well as turn it too. All right, the last supply that we need, of course, is some brushes. I will be using some of my personally designed Craftamo brushes for this piece today, but you can pull out whatever you have on hand. We'll be needing a round brush for the petals. This is a number 6 round, but any size will do. The only difference is how large or small your petals are going to be. But with that said, I do recommend more of a medium size for this particular piece. I'll also be using an angle brush for the leaves, maybe a small number 3 round, and lastly, a number 1 rigger brush. And I am happy to say these brushes will be back in stock in just 1 or 2 months. So if you're interested in getting your own set of these, I will leave my product page link in the description of this video so you can sign up to be notified as soon as they are ready. And as a side note, I will have information and links for any of the other products you see me using today listed in the description as well if you're interested. All right, I think we're ready to get to painting. Let's use maybe this smaller number 3 round to paint in the centers of the flowers first. That way we can have a base to build the petals around. I'll just pull out a little bit of Gamboge for the main color for the flower centers, but then I'll also pull out a little bit of Cadmium orange as an accent shade color. Okay, we'll just start these centers off with the Gamboge color first. Nothing too tricky or complicated here. Basically, I'm just using small stroke lines to fill in the space of the center for the flower, which is a very simple semicircle shape. You'll see that I'm leaving the top of this a little bit more rough and jagged to create the look of individual stamen lines. I can come back in here and erase some of the pencil lines that still might be showing later. Like I say, the pencil marks are just there for a guide. But this is all quick and simple, fairly easy. Don't take too much time on it. Now that I have all 5 of my flower centers painted in with that base layer of Gamboge, we can now add in a little bit of shadow color to create some more dimension, and we'll use that cadmium orange next. I'll paint this in using that same type of brush stroke, but this time I'm not going to be covering the entire space. I'll just paint this more along the bottom half of this center area. Some of my Gamboge paint may still be a little bit wet at this point, but I don't mind too much if that bleeds a little bit. It's just going to add to the the look, but if you don't want your colors to bleed, then just wait until this initial layer of paint is dry before you start adding in this shadow color. All right, I'm just going to add one more layer of color to these centers to really make them pop. This time I'm going to use a nice dark brown. I'll just mix up a little bit of burnt umber with a hint of Payne's gray to just darken it up a little bit more. Then I'll use a touch of that dark brown and paint that along the very base of the center to finish off the look, adding a little bit more depth and detail to the piece. This is going to create a good contrast of light and dark values, and this can really make the painting pop. Okay, this is a good base start for the flowers. So now comes the fun part. Let's paint in the petals. You are going to love how simple and fun these are to paint in. So I'll switch over to my number 6 round brush now and mix up a pretty color to use. The good news is you can really paint these in with whatever color you like, or maybe even an assortment of colors. I think it would literally be beautiful with any color you choose. I've decided to go with a nice blue for today. This is just some ultramarine blue, but I may add just a hint of mineral violet into the mix just to give it a slight blue-violet feel. Then all we have to do to paint in these petals is load the brush with color, place the pointy tip of the bristles at the base or center part of the flower, and then to make the petal stroke, you start pulling out on the brush with a very light touch at first, and then as you start getting farther out, you start pressing down harder on the bristles, and then you finish off that stroke with a nice wide rounded end. And that is all there is to it. Super simple. I kind of like to start these petal strokes more at the center of the flower and then work my way to either end of the flower. I also think that it's kind of fun to have the petals painted in a variety of lengths to give the flower a fun, loose, more organic look. And these flowers I'm painting today are all at a side-facing view. So of course, we're just painting the petals on the bottom half, but you absolutely could change things up and paint the centers of the flowers in a full circle and then paint the petals all the way around for more of an open look if you'd like to try that. But at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and paint in the rest of these flowers in exactly the same way, but I may change things up just slightly by making some of the flowers look a little larger in size by pulling out the petal strokes a little bit farther, making them a little longer. I hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. These are so simple and so fun and yet so beautiful. And there are so many options of how you could use these and create a painting with this type of flower, including different colors, different sizes, the number of flowers you use, and how you arrange or compose the piece. And then I think the best part about these is that they really don't take too long to paint either. You can whip these out really quickly. But if you find you're enjoying my painting and teaching style, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming tutorials. All right, there we go. These look awesome. Now, at this point, I was ready to start painting in the stem lines and finish the painting off, but I was kind of looking at this and felt like some of the petals needed to be a little bit darker, so I took the risk of painting over just a few of the petals again with a little bit more color to give some of the flower petals a little bit more variety. But if you feel satisfied with how your flowers look right now, go ahead and skip over to the next step. Painting over some of those petals again was a bit of a risky move, but I think the risk was worth it because I like this much better. So now let's add in the greenery next. I'll just switch over to my angle brush now. This is about a 1/4 inch size, maybe a little bit larger than that, but I love the leaves that an angle brush can create. So we're just going to get some green color out on our tray. I think I'll use a mixture of sap green with just a touch of alizarin crimson added in the mix to make it slightly darker with more of a brownish hint to it. Then it's time to paint in some grass or leaf shapes down at the base of the page. And all we have to do for this is load the brush, hold the brush with the point facing downward. Then we'll start the stroke out with the thin side of the brush first. And as we move the brush outward, we'll turn it to more of the broad side of the bristles and then back again to the thin side to finish it off with a point at the tip. And if you want to make the leaves or the grass a little bit thicker, all you have to do is add another stroke to that. The first 2 grass blades I started at the bottom and then painted it moving up the page. But just for information's sake, so you can choose which way works best for you, you can also start the stroke at the tip of the leaf first instead. And again, as you pull out that stroke, you turn the brush to the broad side and then back again to the thin side and finish it off at the base. So try out those 2 different ways, see which way you like better, or if you're having a hard time using the angle brush or you don't have one, you absolutely can use a round brush instead, just whatever works for you. Okay, I think now might be a good time to paint in the one little bud that I have here. I'll go ahead and paint it blue at the top of the bud, and then down at the base I will add some greenery. All right, we are just about done here. The last thing we need to do is add in the stem lines. I saved those for last so that we could kind of go in and around all of the other things we have going on the page. I'll just use that same green color, but I will switch over to the #1 rigger brush to paint these in. This #1 rigger is really good at painting nice, thin strokes. If you don't have a #1 rigger, a small round brush will work also. Now that I've got the main stem lines in here, I think I'll just add a few more very thin lines for some extra fun little greenery to add a little bit more detail to the piece. I'll just paint these in really super thin, and then I'll add in some dots of green color at the tips of them to make them look more like little buds or seeds or something along the grass. These are just a fun little addition to the piece and add some smaller shapes which can create a nice variety to the composition. The very last thing I'll do to this painting is just take a good eraser and erase any leftover pencil lines that I can still see or that I didn't paint over. I didn't follow all of my pencil marks exactly, and this just cleans it up a bit. But make sure that your paint is completely dry before doing this so you don't accidentally smear or smudge your paint. And that, my friends, is it for a fun little flower piece today. These are just quick and easy that can give you a painting fix without taking a ton of time. So I hope you'll give them a try. And I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.